Alright, let's add some sound effects to this thing just to make it a little more fun. And in hunting around for sound effects, I found out that somebody created a clone of Donkey called Sorry Ass, which I find a lot funnier than I probably should. You can see it's all character-based graphics, but the sound effects are actually kind of cool. So, well done, whoever created Sorry Ass. I just find that to be kind of fun. All right, so let's go back to Unity, and let's go import the sound effects that are in the resources for this project. So, I'm going to go into my sounds folder. I'm going to right-click on a blank area, and I'm going to say Import New Asset. And I'm going to go into the resources for this project and select the 3 sounds and say Import. And they all start with SND. That's how you can tell that they are sounds. So let's start with an easy one first. Let's go into the prefabs folder here, and we want to modify our crash object. So to do that, we've got to put one into our scene. So I've dragged a crash object into our scene, and now let's put one of our sound effects on it. So we have a crash sound effect, and notice I'm just going to drag that sound effect over onto this object. And what we've got here is this checkbox, play on awake. Most of the time, you don't want this thing checked, and it drives me crazy that because I add a lot of sound effects, and then when I start the game, they all play simultaneously when I didn't want them to. But in this case, we actually want to leave it checked, because when we create the crash, we want it to start playing right away. And this is actually nice. We don't have to modify any code at all. So all we did was drag our crash sound effect onto our crash object, and now what we have to do is rebuild this prefab. So let's take the crash and drag it down here onto the object in the prefabs folder. So we have now rebuilt our kind of clonable crash, and notice that it's got that audio source on it now. And now that I've fixed up my crash object, I want to delete the one that I just added into the scene to play around with. And now let's test that out and just verify that it works. Do 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 do. Come on, cow. Come on. There we go. All right. So there is the crash sound effect working. Let's go modify the controller script to get some sound effects in there. Now, by the time you get this script, it'll already be modified. But you know, you can at least see how we can get this to work, and you know, so you at least see some of how the code works. So here's our controller, and this is a little kind of annoying problem in Unity. Just like watch what happens, and then I'll show you how to fix it. Let's say you want to put more than one audio source on an object. If I take the click sound and I drag it on here, see I get the audio source. But then I want to drag the beep sound on here as well. Watch what happens. If I drag this thing on here, all it did was replace the existing audio source. I didn't get a second audio source. All it did was clobber the first one. So I'm going to remove that component. And here's the trick. You have to go to Add Component and say, I want to add an audio source. And then you can drag in, let's drag in the beep sound for the first clip. And then I can click Add Component, and I can add a second audio source. Now you see I have 2 audio sources. And now I can expand that, and you can see there's a slot there for the audio clip. Let me drag the click sound over there. And so now I have 2 audio sources on this object. And now the question is, how do I get those audio sources from within the code and tell them to play? So that's going to require some coding. So I'm going to go over to the controller script here, and let me make an array of audio sources. So I'll make an audio source array called sounds, and I'll set it, and you know what, and I'll just leave it like that. And then in my start function, what I will do is get the sounds. I will say sounds equals get components of type, using the angle brackets, audio source. So what this will do, if I hover over this, you'll see it returns an audio source array. It returns me a block of audio sources, a group of audio sources, and it stores it in sounds. So I said, hey, here's a bunch of sounds, and now I want to actually go grab the sounds. So now we have a reference to our audio sources. Get the sounds. There we go. And now that we have the sounds, we can actually go play the sound effects. So now let's go figure out where we have to play our sounds. And when we play the beep sound, we play the beep sound when we change lanes, and we do that in the update function. So in the update function, we check to see if the player exists. If the player exists, then we check to see if the space bar is down, and then we say if the player's in the left lane, put the player in the right lane, otherwise put the player in the left lane. So in here, we want to see, we want to play one of our sound effects. So what we want to do is check to see that our sounds actually they got added. So let's say if our sound effects are not equal to null, which means our sounds exist, then we want to play one of our sounds. And I forget which one we actually added. So the first one is the beep sound. That's when we change lanes. How do we play the first sound? Okay, well this is kind of interesting. Let's go back to this object. When you add multiple components, you add multiple audio sources, and then you ask Unity to get those components for you, you get them in the same order that they were added, and as an array. And arrays start at 0 in C#. So this first thing is audio source 0. The second audio source is audio source 1. So we can actually say sounds square brackets 0 dot play, right? So we're checking to see if our sounds exist. If they do, play it. All right, so let's run this and see if it works. Oh, what did I do wrong? I left play on awake. I'm sure that was it. Let's look at our controller. Play on awake. There it was. Play on awake. I hate play on awake. Let me save my scenes. There it is. It works. Beautiful. So now let's take this code that we've got here and we'll just move it elsewhere in our project. We're going to copy and paste this and then use this to play the little click sound that's kind of like the motor for the car. So where do we do that? Well, let's see. Do we have we have our update function, and where's the motion of I guess we could do it in the update function. Update is called once per frame, though. That would play the kind of the sound effect way too quickly. What we want to do is play that little quick sound, like kind of maybe every time the car moves up a little bit or something like that. And in this script there happens to be a function called tick that I'm using to do just that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my tick function here, and I'm going to say if the sound effects aren't null, play the second sound effect. And so the first sound effect is sound 0, the second sound effect is sound 1. How do I know which is sound 0 and which is sound 1? Because that's the order I added them, right? So the first sound effect here, sound effect 0, is the beep sound when we change lanes, and the second one that I added is the click sound. That is the one that we want to play, kind of every time we move the car up a pixel. And now let's run it and see what it does. Click, click, click. There it is. And now we have something that kind of reasonably approximates a really lame 8-bit car engine. There we go. We got. I'd say that's a pretty good clone of Donkey. Although, in retrospect, I kind of wish I'd named it Sorry Ass from the get-go. But there it is. There's a pretty good, intro to 2D stuff in Unity. It's similar to the 3D stuff, except that everything is kind of in a, it's all in one plane. We've got the 2D colliders, the 2D rigid bodies. In 3D, we just have 3D box colliders, 3D rigid bodies, or they're just called rigid bodies and box colliders, right? So most of those physics components that we have in 2D also exist in 3D. All of this stuff with manipulating the user interface, dragging and dropping controls, importing scripts, that all holds in the 3D stuff as well. Really, it's just kind of the camera that's different in a 2D game versus a 3D game. So when you make a 2D game in Unity, what you're doing is really building a 3D engine, but only looking at it from a 2D perspective. So, but there you go. And then now you have a game, and you can go here to the build settings, and you can build this thing and build it for Windows, and I'll call it Donkey Demo. Does not exist. Okay, so I have to pick a folder, so I'll say select folder. Oh, nuts. I'll just build it right here. There you go, and now it should actually build my project, and I'll end up with an executable that I can actually just open up on its own. I won't have to open up Unity to run the game. So there you go. If you have any trouble getting this to work, let me know. If you're doing this at home as remote learning, take a little video of it with your phone, or do a screen capture using OBS or Screencastify or whatever YouTube lets you do. And there's our game. Just so I can see that it works. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.